if I were to tell you that everything you've been through or everything you're going through is preparing you for something bigger in your life? What if I were to tell you that everything that has tried to break you will soon lead to your breakthrough? Would you believe me? You see, I grew up in a place called Wilmington, Delaware, a city that was stricken with drugs and violence. It's a place where kids live by the motto, live fast, die young, because most don't think they will make it to see 18. It's a place where a lot of people don't make it out of, but I did. My talent on the football field landed me over 50 scholarships to the top D1 schools in the country. I ultimately decided to go to the best university in the world to play under the best coach in college football history in front of the best student section in the world. Just when I thought I had finally made it out, that my life would be a breeze after making it out of Wilmington, I faced two major obstacles that threatened to end my college career before it even began and steal my childhood dream of playing in the NFL. My freshman year, I was having a breakout training camp. I was playing so good, I had a chance to play as a true freshman. But during one of our practices, I went chasing after the running back after he was sprinting down the sideline after catching the screen pass. And when I reached out to grab him, our offensive lineman grabbed my shoulder, and my knee popped. I tore my ACL and my MCL. My breakout training camp ended just like that. No longer would I be spending my freshman year living out my dream of playing in front of 110,000 screaming fans at Beaver Stadium. Instead, I was out for the season. I had to spend a year in rehab fighting to get back out on the field. It was hard. It was frustrating, but I did it. I made it back just in time for the start of training camp the following year, and I picked up right where I left off. My dreams were finally about to become my reality. I just needed to make it through the last scrimmage of the training camp, and I would get to experience the real thing. But at this scrimmage, a player was thrown into my left leg and it snapped in half. I was rushed to the hospital where I had to get surgery, and the doctors had to put a metal plate and 10 screws in my leg. How could this have happened? I just spent the whole year fighting to get back out on the football field. But no longer would I be spending my sophomore year living out my dreams of playing in front of 110,000 screaming fans in Beaver Stadium. Instead, I was out for the season again. And I had to spend a year inside rehab fighting to get back out on the football field. It was hard. It was frustrating. But I did it. After 2 years of hell, after 2 years of wanting to give up on myself and my dreams, I finally got my chance to play in front of 110,000 screaming fans in Beaver Stadium. And despite all the challenges I had to go through, despite all the career-threatening injuries I faced, by the time I became a senior, I was one of the best players in college football. I was named the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year and Lineman of the Year. I became one of only 42 Penn State players in history to be named a consensus All-American, and I was drafted number 53rd overall in the 2012 NFL Draft. I was living my dreams. All my problems was now behind me. So I thought. During my second year of the NFL was one of the toughest years I ever been through in my life. During a game against the Detroit Lions, I went to go tackle Reggie Bush. And when I reached out my arm to grab him, our linebacker came running full speed and put his helmet right into the back of my elbow, dislocating it. After 5 weeks of rehab, I was able to make it back out onto the field. But a week later, I blew my back out against the Steelers, and I had to get season-ending back surgery. A week after that, I was rushed to the hospital where I almost died because of multiple blood clots in my lungs. Why is this happening to me? God, why do you keep punishing me? I know my life is not perfect. And I know I grew up in an environment where snitching is not the cool thing to do. But look, I got a list of people who are living way worse lives than me. You can go bother them and leave me alone. After that blood clot scare, my wife suggested that we start going to church. Maybe so much was going wrong in our lives because we didn't have God in our lives, she said. So I agreed. We were so serious about trying to build a relationship with God and change our lives that we got baptized together. I knew at this point we were as good as bulletproof. Now, we just gave our lives to God. Can't nothing hold us back now. Yes, that was a double negative, but we learned earlier we can use those, right? 2 months later, I found out just how wrong I was. After accepting Jesus as our Lord and Savior, on June 2nd, 2014, I was sat down by a doctor and told that my 4-year-old daughter had stage 4 neuroblastoma, a form of cancer that came with a 50% chance of her dying. I remember going to the chapel that night in the hospital on the first floor, and I just collapsed on the floor in front of the altar. And I just started crying. God, how can you allow this to happen to my daughter when I just gave my life to you 2 months ago? I was so confused and hurt. I cried out to God, asking if he heard my cries and let me know that I'm not alone. And I asked him to fill that room with his presence like I heard the pastor say in church the day before. And as soon as I said that, the whole room started shaking. It was like something that you see in a movie that you think is fake, that they just added it for added drama. But this right here was real. It was as if as God was looking down on me, telling me, Devon, get up and fight. Everything that you've been through in your life was preparing you for this very moment. Every challenge that I had put in front of you was teaching you how to become unbreakable, how to become resilient. You see, for decades, researchers believed that resiliency wasn't something that could be taught or developed. They believed it was a trait that you had to be born with, a trait that was reserved for a select few. But I'm here today to tell you that that's not true. Resiliency can be taught, it can be learned, and it can be developed through pain and suffering. And it's something that we all possess. So on that day, June 2nd, I finally realized why I had to go through so much suffering in my life. I finally realized why I had to go through so much pain. Because I was learning how to become resilient. I was learning how to become unbreakable. Because now I had a 4-year-old daughter laying in a hospital bed fighting death. And she was dependent on her dad to come up with a game plan to help save her life. So that night in the hospital, I put together a playbook of all the lessons that I learned from adversity, everything I used to overcome it. And I walked into my daughter's hospital room and I said, baby, daddy got a plan. We're going to beat this. And that playbook that was built off of pain and suffering, that playbook that was filled with resiliency, helped my daughter make one of the greatest comebacks in oncology history as she went on to beat up cancer, as she likes to say. So today what I want to do is share the top 5 plays out of our playbook to help you become resilient, to help you become unbreakable, so that you can make the greatest comeback in your life. The first play in this playbook is to believe. Believe that a better future exists for yourself. Believe in your vision. Believe in your dream. And notice I said you have to believe. Other people don't need to believe in your vision. They don't need to believe in your dream. From the day Leah was diagnosed with cancer, I made sure she believed in herself. So I made her wear a shirt that said future cancer survivor all the time because I knew if she could see this vision, she would do whatever she could to get to it. Because when you have hope for your future, it gives you power in the presence to take action and make your vision become a reality. So I ask you today, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about your situation? The next play is to give your battle a purpose. Why must you overcome the obstacles you're facing in your life? Why must you break down the walls that are standing in between you and where you want to be? I told you guys earlier, I came up from a rough environment. And after my 2 major injuries my freshman and sophomore year, I wanted to give up on myself. I wanted to leave Penn State and go back home. But one weekend I decided to go back home just to clear my mind before I made a decision. And while I was there, I ended up going to a party with some of my friends. And at the end of this party, I walked out into the parking lot. And as I was walking to the car, a guy that was standing right behind me ended up getting shot in the head and died. In that moment, when I watched him die, I finally found my why. I finally realized that I couldn't give up on my dreams of making it to the NFL because I couldn't allow my family to grow up in the same environment I grew up in. When one day you can be hanging out with your friends and the next day you're wearing them on a t-shirt as a memorial. I had to fight through the pain so that one day my family wouldn't hurt anymore. My purpose was much greater than my pain. And when you know your why, you will figure out a how to get to your destination. The next play was to put on your game face. You see, I can walk around a huddle. I can walk around a locker room and look players in their eye to see if they're ready to play a game or not without saying a word to them, just by the look that they have on their face. And so many times I see people go attack the game of life without their game face on. Like they're not willing to fight for their dreams. Like they're not willing to fight for their life or fight for their family. Every time Leah had to go get chemo, she had to go to the hospital for 5 days straight. And she would get a 21-day break, and then she would have to go back again. But every time she got to the front door of the hospital, I would stop her at the door, tell her to turn around, and I would say, Leah, game face. And she would go, oh, right? Because I was mentally preparing her that no matter what you're about to go through in this hospital, you got to fight. No matter how much pain you're in from that toxic pumping through your body, you got to keep fighting. You got to put on your game face. So when you wake up, don't just wake up like you don't know what you're fighting for in your life. Wake up like you're on a mission and put your game face on. The next play is to have fun. The lesson I learned when I first started playing Little League football was to always have fun. It was a game where we were losing to one of the good teams in our league, and everybody was walking around the field with their heads down. And our coach called us up in a huddle, and he told us to pick our heads up. And he said, the moment you stop having fun is the moment you lose the game. And when he said that, it hit me different because I felt like he was talking about much more than just the game of football, but he was talking about life. And I remember one time in particular when Leah had first got diagnosed with cancer, I was sitting in my wife's living room, and her roommate had friends over the house, and somebody told a joke in the kitchen, and the whole room burst out in laughter. And I started laughing too. But about 5 seconds after me laughing, my brain told me to stop. What could I possibly think is so funny? How could I be enjoying myself when I have a 4-year-old in the hospital fighting death? But I remembered that lesson that my Little League coach taught me, to always have fun. So I made a decision right then and there that no matter what my daughter was going through, we would continue to have fun because I knew if we stopped, there would be no chance in hell of her beating this disease. That's why if you followed us on social media, you would see me with no rhythm dancing inside stores in public, right? I would be wearing wigs, singing karaoke with my daughter, doing anything I could to make sure she kept a smile on her face because I knew that was the only way we can win the game. Think about how many times we allow outside circumstances to control our emotions. When things don't go right in our lives, we allow it to control our emotions. But I'm going to tell you like I told my daughter, the moment you stop having fun is the moment you lose the game. And the last play of our playbook was the fight for 4 quarters. In football, we're taught no matter how tired you are, no matter how much pain you're in, as long as there's time on the clock, you got to keep fighting. So when Leah first got diagnosed, we put her into a clinical trial that doctors thought was going to save her life. But after they did some testing 4 months later, after her getting chemo and radiation, they found out that the cancer had spread all over her body. That it had went from just being in her hip to now it was in her chest, in her shoulders, in her neck, and even in her skull. If there was ever a moment where I thought my daughter was going to die, it was that moment. But like I just told you, I was taught to fight for 4 quarters. And I looked at my daughter and I said, as long as you're alive, as long as I'm alive, we're going to continue to fight. 2 months after putting her into a new clinical trial, after the cancer spread all over her body, she was completely healed. She was in remission. Imagine if she would have gave up too soon. Imagine if she would have gave up when there was still time on the clock. She wouldn't be here today. So I don't know what some of you are going through in your life right now. I don't know what challenges you're facing. But what I want to do is challenge you to get off the sideline and get into the game, because that's the only chance you have at winning. And no matter what you're going through, as long as you still have breath in your body, as long as you're still alive, you're still in the game. It's game time. Thank you.